Every CEO's journey has its Everest. The moments when the path forward feels steep, uncertain, and alone. With Sherpa CEO coaching, you don't climb alone. Our experienced coaches are your guides, helping you break through barriers, sharpen your strategy, strengthen your leadership, and build a team that can carry you higher. With tailored one-on-one coaching, strategic planning, and real accountability, your summit is within reach. Sherpa CEO Coaching, your guide to confidence, clarity, and extraordinary business growth. Get coached and learn more at sherpaceo.com.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, and I have with me this morning special guest, Adam Jason, CEO, co-CEO of the Green Coffee Company and lifelong Buffalo Bills fan.
This is true. Thank you. Nice to be here, Dave. I appreciate it.
I'm glad that you were on the show today. Thank you for taking the time. I'm always so interested to learn about coffee. I mean, everywhere I go, I see the coffee line around the block, right? One of my worst memories is I'm personally not a coffee drinker. I'm allergic to caffeine. But my wife is a monstrous coffee drinker. And so, we went to Disneyland, and when we went to Disneyland, she's like, "I got to get a cup of coffee." And I'm like, "Okay. I understand how you might feel that way." And she spent an hour in the line waiting for a cup of coffee when you just spent 10 grand or something going to Disneyland, right? So this idea of consumption of coffee and what people do for coffee is just it's incredible. So
right.
It always is just such a surprise to me. What got you into the coffee business?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. So probably unexpected twists and turns along the way, but I'm actually a corporate attorney by background, capital markets attorney, worked for pre-IPO companies, public companies, Fortune 500s, Wall Street investment banks for the start of my career. Did that for about 8 years. Ended up reaching a fork in the road for the next steps of my own path. You get to that point in the big law firm world and you basically have three options. It's become a partner at the law firm, go work in-house at one of your clients, or do something entrepreneurial and different. I found Medellin, Colombia, where I'm talking to you from today, back in 2017. Met my now business partner who was starting our coffee company, the Green Coffee Company. At that point, we were discussing the initial steps in growing the business and raising the first round of capital. My experience as a capital markets attorney working with US-based investors in the US also applied to a project in Colombia that was tapping into US investors for capital for that project. So just the timing seemed to coincide correctly, made the entrepreneurial jump down to Colombia in 2018. And then the roots for the business itself were, we had a group of investors who were already focused on the market, had been investing in commercial real estate and short-term rental opportunities in Colombia, but they wanted something that kind of lived, breathed, felt like real estate that wasn't real estate. So we came up with the idea to leverage some of the market knowledge and consumer knowledge that already exists about coffee and Colombia and the US consumer and those kind of being synonymous. And we just started building from there.
Well, that's pretty cool, man. So that's a great background, right? I mean, eight years as a corporate attorney working for some of the largest Fortune 500 companies, major investment banks, IPOs, and so forth. What was the moment when you decided to say, I want to go out on my own. I want to take this entrepreneurial journey on. Because I got to imagine on some level you're making a good paycheck as a corporate attorney. I have a corporate attorney, and I know that I pay them a small fortune. And so I know that life, has to be comfortable in that standpoint. So you've got this kind of good life trajectory set out, and you say, wait a minute, stop the presses. Let's go do something completely unknown. Not only are we going to do something unknown, we're going to do it in a foreign country. And by the way, we're going to do it in coffee. What was it that sparked in you that just said, I'm done with the rat race. Let's go live this wild life and jump off a cliff?
I probably started getting the itch around year 6 of my years practicing law. I was able to look forward a little bit and see the lives and work and things that the younger partners at the firm were doing, and kind of could predict a little bit of what my next probably 10 years would look like. And it just wasn't overwhelmingly compelling to me. I had some great interviews to go in-house at clients, which might have been a special opportunity. Yeti Coolers was an opportunity out there. Brown Forman, which owns Jack Daniels, was one I looked at. Some really cool companies. But I just said, I really would like to try and do something on my own. My downside always throughout the process was I just go back to doing what I've done before.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have my daughter, which I now have. I just had some flexibility in my personal life, and the money was important to me, but not the be all end all. So, with low downside risk and just kind of like that itch for something new, Colombia was particularly compelling because it was so new, right?
Yeah.
I had to come down here and learn a new language and learn a new culture and just do something totally different. I just found it to be exciting, and I don't know, fate has a funny way of making the stars align sometimes, and it's been good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you speak fluent Spanish?
I do. I make my mistakes, but I keep up.
Okay, and you learned all of that over the last 5 years?
98%.
98%. Yeah. All right.
It took French when I was in high school and college, and then whatever you learn from watching some Univision or being around the language, the basics. But yeah, being in the culture and in the country, is the immersion is certainly useful.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, okay, so you've got this itch around year 6. You had some great opportunities, Yeti, Jack Daniels. You're moving on, and you decide to take the leap. Did you look at other opportunities before the Green Coffee Company? Had you explored other things, maybe a franchise, maybe a business on your own, or did you just how did you decide this was where you were going to go?
Nothing of meaningful scale. I did some investing in some short-term rentals. You mentioned I'm from Buffalo. I bought some properties up there. I wrote a book to help other aspiring attorneys pass the bar exam.
Okay.
In my career, I've taken and passed 3 different bars as I moved around from one firm to the next. I had to qualify in different states. So I had some experience there. But, as let's call it kind of a big step or a career shift, I did not do a lot of searching. I said, I'm going to set up shop in Colombia and see where things go from here.
What vetting did you do for that? Did you go down, you met your current partner, you looked at the operation, You looked at his vision? Like how did you put that together? I had a job offer, accepted a new position to go to a firm in Houston. I was in Dallas at the time, and I had a month between positions. So I spent about a month down here getting to know the market, meeting people, understanding kind of the interest from the expat community in placing capital in Colombia. Started to get a feel for the market, but a lot of it was just gut feel and reaction. And then again, like I said, understanding that the worst that happens is I do this for a couple of months, it doesn't work, and then I go back and yeah,
that's a corporate attorney for somebody like yourself.
That's kind of cool, man. That's kind of cool. So the funny thing is, as I'm thinking about this, You're an attorney. I'm asking you questions. You're answering the questions. And, the funny thing is I was talking to an attorney the other day and he was saying, you know what? When my wife asks me questions, it's yes, no, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Yes. No. She's like, why don't you ever explain anything? He says, because I'm an attorney. I don't know. Attorneys, we don't explain anything, because, there's
Right.
there's always consequences on the other end of those answers. And I was thinking, okay, I wonder what it's going to be like interviewing an attorney, but it's actually, so it's kind of fun, to do that.
I could certainly answer the questions that way if you'd like. I'm
No.
just not sure
It'll
it'd be
ruin the
very
show. It'll
interesting.
ruin the show. Let's not do it.
Okay.
No, that's you're doing a great job. It's a lot of fun. It's really interesting to listen to how you got into it and how you decided to, make that decision, because I think so many entrepreneurs are so scared to make the leap, right? So many people
Sure.
don't want to take that step. They have that itch, they have that dream, but they just don't do it, right? And I love what you said about, well, if I get into this thing and it doesn't work, I can always go back to what I was doing.
Absolutely.
Like no harm lost, right? Like I can keep
Right.
this thing going. So you get down there, you're putting this together, and what is the first things that you guys do to build this business?
Had to raise capital.
Okay.
We knew that there was investor interest from high net worth US investors looking for some exposure internationally in a market that they were already familiar with and in a product and asset class that they could wrap their heads around. So we had to raise the initial capital. And then we took that capital and went to work starting to buy farms and consolidate operations.
Okay.
Today, we're the largest producer of coffee in the country. It's kind of crazy to say. We're at about 10,000 acres that we own and operate, about 10 million coffee trees. That makes us 3 times larger than the next largest producer in the country. So we've come a long way in a short period.
Yeah, you have. So becoming the Colombia's largest producer of coffee in under 5
Yes.
years. How did you, I get it. You put the businesses together, you purchased the land, you consolidated operations, you basically just kind of did a roll up, right? That's kind of what you did.
That's right.
You rolled it all up.
That's right.
And then you put efficiencies in place, put managers in place. So what did that look like on your end? Like, how did you decide what farms we're going to buy? What changes we're going to make at those farms? What did that look like?
We first had to pick regions of that made sense. Meaning you have, Colombia is a coffee country. It's the second largest producer of Arabica coffee in the world. But the market itself is very fragmented. 95% of all the farming operations that are done here are family businesses where you have people owning less than 5 acres at the high end.
Wow.
So we had to find regions where we were able to find larger farm groupings, and particularly regions of the country where they were monocrop focused, so that we could find the right labor and we had people who were familiar with farming coffee. So we did that initial analysis. We also wanted to not be too far from major cities. So our offices, for example, are in Medellin, Colombia, but our farms are about 2 hours from here, driving distance. So we needed something that was relatively functional. And then we got to work finding out who are the large families that own these farms. It's not, you're not doing roll-ups like, we're buying from corporates. Really, the way the farming business, I think this comes as a bit of a surprise to people. You don't have Nestle and Starbucks and these these coffee companies that everybody knows here on the ground actually running operations. They get their coffee way later in the process from middlemen, exporters, importers, traders. They don't really know anything that's going on usually at origin. So it's buying coffee farms from families.
Wow.
Usually the history is almost identical transaction to transaction. You'll have great-grandfather, couple generations ago, buy some land. They live next to their brothers, sisters, relatives. They start putting some land together. They're all farmers and on a collective piece of property. That becomes a family asset that goes down through the generations, starts to become something of value. And inevitably, it reaches a point where most of the family's wealth is tied up in the coffee farm. We don't have here in Colombia, basically, you don't go to Citibank and say, hey, I want to refi out of my property and tap into my equity. You got to sell it, basically.
Okay.
You'll get to a point eventually where one of the sons or some of the siblings want to go live in Miami or study in New York or what have you, and they need to access the capital that's tied up in the land. So that's where we tried to come in to the process, is providing liquidity to those generational farming families that wanted to liquidate the asset and get some cash. We would either buy them out entirely or set up seller financing arrangements with the families, and we just went from there. Consolidated. First acquisition was about 600 acres, and we scaled up from there. Got to about the 10,000 figure that I mentioned to you.
10,000
challenge.
acres.
I mean, you have to live 10,000 acres. You got to learn the language first
Yep.
off. Those deals are done in farming communities in rural Colombia. This is not a sit at a boardroom, and this is more often like sit outside somebody's house and drink coffee. And then you have to understand the culture too. The typical transaction, you're not dealing necessarily with one decision maker. It might be 11 brothers, sisters, cousins, sons, relatives that all have a small piece of the business, and they all have their own asks and interests and those kinds of things. So certainly challenging to navigate. But we did it. So
Yeah, you did it. It sounds like you did a great job, and it must have been tough coming in as an American, right? Like, is there's some trust factors you have to break through there, right? Where they think, oh, you're gonna sell me a bill of goods, you're ripping me out. Like, you got to earn some street credit.
you do. You have to get those first couple transactions done, and then the word of mouth spreads. For a lot of these families, they're almost sitting there dying for like somebody to come in. There are not a lot of buyers for these large farming estates. Not a lot of people with this kind of access to capital. So as soon as you do a couple and start showing like, all right, they pay, this is somebody
legit.
you want to do, but this is legit, then deals started coming to us. It definitely became easier. The word would spread. We had to overcome those initial hurdles with the actual sellers, but then also in the communities themselves. A lot of these rural towns and areas that we were dealing with had poor experience before of foreign investment or large scale investment coming in from corporations, and they were skeptical. Are these guys going to come in here and mine for gold or whatever? Like, people get a lot of ideas in their head and view you in a skeptical way until you prove that you're trying to do things the right way, and they actually want to grow coffee and provide jobs for the community and those kinds of things.
That's cool. I love that. Does so do you live full time in Colombia?
Last year, we opened our U.S. headquarters outside Chicago. My role in the company has been to lead our U.S. sales and logistics operations. So right now I share my time between Colombia and Chicago. My wife and my daughter are still here in Colombia. So I bounce back and forth as much as I possibly can. But my co-CEO and I, that's the reason for the title. I lead our U.S. operations, and then my business partner is on top of our Colombia operations.
Okay, cool. So you met your wife in Colombia?
I did. I met her about 2 months into my time here, so very early on in the process. And then we had a daughter in 2024, our first daughter. So
well, congratulations
special.
On that.
Thank you.
This is a beautiful time. What, 2-3 years old, right? Coming into that
Yeah,
age and
she's about 18 months old.
okay, so she's
Walking,
talking, she's
talking,
moving, right?
learning both languages, really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
it's a beautiful thing.
Congratulations on the family. I think
Thank you.
that's the best part of life, right? The most important
That's great.
decision you make is who you marry. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So you're building the business back and forth between Chicago and Columbia.
Yes.
You put all of these farms together. It's very rural. It's very boots on the ground. It's very get your boots wet with these folks. As you put these plans together and let's say you buy a farm and it's a couple hundred acres, or you said these estate farms that you're putting together, are you keeping that family working the farm, or do they move out of the farm, or how do you handle that transition? Is it kind of like an extended, you're the owner, but they're still working, they're still making money, they're still getting paid, or is it you're bringing in a whole new team that does it a whole new way?
Traditionally, this is their saving grace. They want to be out of the business. Eventually, you get to that point in the generational turnover chain, and they don't want to be coffee farmers. They want to leave and and go do something else. Often, we'll end up keeping some of the employees or people that have worked with them over the years, but the people that we're actually buying from do tend to say, like, that's I want to go do something different.
Did that create does that create a hurdle for you to find new leadership on that particular farm, or is it not that big of a deal?
Finding leadership for the company on a whole was obviously a key endeavor for us. Finding the right minds to lead the company across all the operations on a farm by farm basis. We will keep, for example, farm managers who were there during the previous ownership, who know all the ins and outs of the farms. You have to remember, the farms here are not, your typical, like, Iowa corn farms where you can see and you just
Mm-hmm.
look for miles. These are coffee farms that are grown literally on the sides of mountains that can be, 90-degree
Yeah.
inclination. So you need people who are familiar with the farms, the kind of inner workings of it. So some of those people we will keep. That's not the upper echelon of talent in terms of what we need to find. But it is, you need people who know the ins and outs of the farms for sure.
When you were getting into this, were you nervous about things like Colombian cartels, political environments? Because I don't know, if I'm looking at it from the outside looking in, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to build this business? Is the cartel going to come in and take it from me? Am I going to have those battles? Am I going to have political problems? Like, how did you decide to navigate through those challenges, or were those challenges really non-existent?
Yeah, the cartel stuff and those issues that went into our initial planning of what regions are where you want to be. And those challenges still do plague Colombia, but they're more heavy in certain regions. We obviously tried to avoid those. Politically, coffee farming and coffee is the national product of Colombia. Whether you're talking about left or right administrations, it's an industry that both groups want to see prosper. It also is the livelihood for about 500,000 families.
Wow.
in the country. So we've had, I'd say, other than on the fringes in terms of, taxes and rules and regulations, like a general support regardless of the administration for the years that we've been doing business. So we've seen right-leaning president, we've seen left-leaning president while we've been doing business. Both sides of the aisle want to see coffee succeed. The other dynamic that you have here too is in these rural towns, there's not a lot of employment opportunity. I think whether you're a right-leaning president or left-leaning president, what you don't want is tons of people receiving, only government benefits and not having job opportunities and things. So as the largest employer in a lot of the regions that we're in, we're viewed in a pretty strong light on both sides of the political spectrum.
Because you're helping
We've
a lot of
also
people.
we're helping a lot of people, right? Like everybody wants jobs.
Yeah.
It's not a controversial thing. And then in the industry itself, for the history of coffee here, because I think largely because it's been a family business and a very small scale operation in most cases, traditional benefits have not existed for workers. So the existence of workers' compensation insurance, health benefits, the things that we might take for granted in a developed market like the US. Now, people here in coffee, I say this like a little bit, I'm not even joking, like people could fall off the side of a mountain and you might not even know that it ever happened, right? Because there's
Hmm.
just no formalization around that. So from a how do we operate, what benefits do we give employees, how do we treat people, we've brought a new, I'd say, sense of leadership or example to be replicated in how we run our operations. So we have to do those things politically. It's the right thing to do. It bleeds into our story in terms of what we sell and what we tell to the end consumer. But it's also important to overcome some of those hurdles that we talked about at the beginning of the skepticism of,
Sure.
basically some foreigners coming in and becoming the largest producers in the country. We have a lot of eyes on us for sure.
How many people do you guys employ in Colombia?
Right now we're at about 375 full
Okay.
time. And then in the harvest season, coffee here in Colombia, because of that mountainous terrain, it's not mechanized. So you still have hand picking that goes on in the harvest season. So people literally going up and down the mountains, picking the coffee off the trees by hand. In our, like, we're getting ready for our spring harvest right now, and we're expecting to have about 800 pickers in the farms during that time.
Wow. So you almost triple your employee
Yeah.
count for the seasonal push. I got to ask
Yes.
this question. When you pick tobacco leaves, if you're going in there and picking tobacco leaves, if you're not wearing rain gear and gloves, you're going to get nicotine sick, right? And be deathly ill in like an hour if you're in that
Yeah.
picking machine. If
Yeah.
When you're picking coffee, is it the same thing where you're wearing rain gear and gloves so that the coffee doesn't get into you and mess you up?
They have to. It's not so much about the coffee itself, but the climate conditions can be rough. The water the rain can come in at any time. And then there's actually like some frogs that are famous, poisonous frogs that are famous for growing in coffee trees that you don't want to get bit by. So you need the right protective layers for that.
Ah,
Also just, any manual labor is rough on the hands if you do it for an extended period of time. So wearing the right gloves and protective equipment is important.
wow. That's crazy, man. What a cultural difference it must have been from Buffalo, New York to Colombia to just putting this whole program together and building. What an
Very much.
incredible organization. What's the
Thank you.
what's the biggest thing you learned that maybe you didn't expect you were going to run into?
Mm. When I was an attorney, I was an employee. I didn't think so much about team building and the importance of talent and leadership and delegation and those kinds of company building aspects that I think are super important as a entrepreneurial. And just realizing you can't do everything, you're not the best at everything, you can't be in all places at all times. So doing that as a company building exercise has definitely been a unique experience.
Hmm. So it's not, what I hear you saying is it's not about yourself. It's about everybody else around you now. It's about,
It is.
everybody you're raising. A raising tide rises all ships, basically.
It is. So, I mean, to make the business functional, we really had to scale up in a big way. So we've invested a little over $100 million. Told you the scale we've gotten to from a farming operation. We've had to bring in really good talent, really talent that knows Colombian coffee, whether it's farming, processing, all aspects of the business. We needed the resources necessary to bring in people who are really comfortable in those roles because we couldn't do it ourselves.
Hmm.
On the US side of the business, same thing. People who are really talented in sales, marketing, logistics, a big investment in farms, infrastructure, and people.
That's very cool. Do you guys have a head legal counsel?
We do work with an outside law firm. I still do a little bit of the day-to-day legal stuff to save on some money, so my talents aren't completely wasted. But yeah, not as much as I used to.
Not as much as you used to, but you still got your hands in the pot a little bit. Okay.
I do.
That's cool. So the picture behind you on the wall, that's basically your company logo, and that's some of your coffee beans.
Yeah, we have, and we do some interesting things on the sales side. So we talked a lot about the Colombia operations. Downstream, we sell our coffee into the US and Canada. And then we have two pieces of the business. There's the green coffee company story and everything we do at Origin, which is represented by the logo behind me. And then in the US, we also have the exclusive rights to the Juan Valdez coffee brand. So for us 40 and over, and especially in the Hispanic community, Juan Valdez is really the preeminent brand that's ever come out of Colombian coffee. We hold rights to that by a license agreement. So you'll see us in Target, Walgreens, about 2,500 doors that we've opened in the last year using the brand itself.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And the Latino community continues to grow in the United States, right? I can't remember what it is, but 1 out of every 3 houses or something like that is purchased by or occupied by a Latino family. So those Spanish speaking folks that are in America, moving into America, are becoming Americans, whatever it is on that spectrum, they know this brand. They know Juan Valdez Diaz coffee. They know this. Yes. And they go in and they say, that's what I want. That's where I'm at. And it's not just in the little, I don't know, Mexican food store that sells, the product to the community directly. You're also branched out into the Targets of the world. So it's more than just the mom and pop organization. Okay, so you've got a big sales effort where you are constantly selling, pushing, opening those doors, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're in those doors that I mentioned for the Juan Valdez brand, in addition to D'Agostino's in New York, rallies out in the West Coast. We're the official coffee for the Chicago Cubs and also the LA Rams. On the B2B, on the B2B side of the business, the green coffee company side, the wholesale, private label, food service. We service the UFC. We service the U.S. National Parks. We service Carnival Cruise Lines. So if you go on one of their ships, you're going to be drinking our coffee. So we built the business really in Colombia. Like, okay, we can tell a different story to the end consumers by being the farmers. As I mentioned, everything, if you buy Starbucks, Nestle, Dunkin', whatever, there's all these other hands in the mix, and they're not able to go back to origin and talk about the impact that they're having all the way back to the bean. Yeah. And so we're a farm to cup coffee company that when we sell to businesses, we hand them a unique story that they can also tell about their supply chain. Like, look, all the impact that we can have by purchasing from this company. And then, as you mentioned, with a growing Hispanic audience, the Juan Valdez coffee brand really resonates in a market where there is no true leader. There's Cafe Bustelo speaks to the Hispanic community, largely focused on the Puerto Rican audience, but there's not Cubans as well. But nobody's really stepped in and commanded the full or achieved kind of that number one position in the mind of the consumers with respect to Colombian coffee. Wow, which actually is the number one origin for coffee consumption in the US. Meaning, if you go to the supermarket and you look at the shelf and you have side by side a Colombian coffee, a Honduran, a Guatemalan, a Cuban, a Jamaican, Hawaiian, 70% of the time, US consumers choose Colombian. but there's nobody who owns Colombia, right? So we're
Hmm.
trying to go for that category ownership in the US and Canada with respect to our sales.
Wow, that's amazing. And because you are farm to cup, you must control pricing better than like a Starbucks of the world, right? With all those middlemen, every time I hear middlemen, that's markup 15%, 20%, 10%, 3%, whatever. Markup, markup, markup. You control the cost at the beginning, which means you control the manufacturing, which means you control the distribution, which means you control the cost, which must help you leverage your way and open doors, because if you can sell at a better cost, it's easier to get the door open. They make more profit, you make more profit, you win. Is that does I'm sure that strategy plays into it. How do you guys leverage that?
Yeah, it definitely gives us a little bit more predictability over cost versus somebody who's buying coffee in the open market. For example, as we see tariff issues, wars in the Middle East, inflation, volatility in commodity markets, the coffee price over the last couple of years have been crazy. We do our best to maintain a stable cost of production. There is some volatility. Those the 800 workers I mentioned to you that are temporary seasonal workers, the price for that labor does float somewhat, corresponding to international coffee market prices. So we do have to balance that, but it gives us more predictability where we can also do things. For example, clients will say, "Oh, I really don't want any price changes for the next 12 months." That can be a risky bet for somebody who's buying coffee in the open market when anything, 10, 20% changes can happen in a day. Having more control over the production gives us a little bit more comfort in extending these longer term deals, giving a little bit more pricing stability to clients. It definitely gives us an edge up in terms of the nuts and bolts of putting sales deals together.
That's awesome. What agricultural risks do you have? Like, you've got these trees on the side of mountains in valley. I mean, I can imagine what Colombia looks like. It feels like, I mean, I'm going to uneducatedly just call it the jungle, right? It feels like I'm in the
Uh-huh.
jungle. I got poison frogs jumping at me. I got spiders crawling up my legs. I got
Sure.
pythons taking my neck down. Like,
Hmm.
I got all this going on. What is your agricultural risk? Like, what things come into that environment that could potentially destroy a crop? Or how do you what are those, first off?
One challenge that the business definitely faces is that inclined farming. The challenge is related to mechanization. More and more people are leaving the coffee harvesting as a job. It's
Hmm.
the population is aging. Some people want to go and work in bigger cities or look for different opportunities. It's just not as attractive to people as maybe as it once was. So finding labor poses a challenge. Making sure we're not leaving coffee on the trees that's getting unpicked. It's very hard to mechanize. So we're interested to see some of the technological developments around drone harvesting and AI in terms of detecting where the coffee's ready to be picked in terms of ripeness and those kinds of things. But those are probably 3 to 5 years away from being meaningful. And then we have to deal with, the challenges that come with climate change. In particular, they are having the biggest impact at lower altitude farming. There's
Hmm.
basically temperature thresholds that coffee will no longer grow at. So as the planet warms some, particularly the lower elevations where where it's hotter, some of that land is becoming no longer usable for coffee. So this is another factor that played into the acquisitions that we were doing, is making sure we're buying coffee farms that were at the appropriate elevations to not have those challenges. But we're always thinking about different strands. There's some scientific research going on in the country right now about climate resistant strands and different varietals of coffee that could be more climate change resistant. Again, that's not a tomorrow issue, but it is something that over the next 10, 20 years we need to be thinking about
Yeah.
more and more.
That's interesting. So that's very, very interesting. So a lower elevation farm is cooler or is warmer. What is it? Is it cooler or
Warmer.
warmer? Okay. So it's
Warmer.
getting warmer.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So interestingly enough, there's a guy by the name of Frank who owns a company called Weatherworks who was on my show
Okay.
about a year ago.
Okay.
And he provides weather data to
Mhm.
Fortune 500 companies as they predict snow removal, and it's in the snow removal industry. And one of the things that he mentioned on the show was that you can see a predictable weather pattern that across the U.S., even though there's been pockets of blizzards and pockets of tough snow, that year over year, we've seen a 1 degree increase in temperatures warming over the last 5 years. Now, I don't know what this year is going to play into it. I haven't talked to him, but
Sure.
it's interesting that has warmed up, and considerably the amount of snow that falls across the U.S. in major markets like Massachusetts, New York, so on and so forth, has decreased. You still get snow, you still get that, but it's decreased year over year. So the big question is, will there be a need for that to happen? Now, you're saying that you're seeing that same thing in that industry, and that is putting a plague on that particular type of business. So if a farm falls under the elevation threshold because of the requirements of the temperature, what happens to that farm space? Is there a way to capitalize on that? Can you pull those workers in and put them on your farms? And what happens to that land at that point?
For us, we always bought at elevations above that cutoff line.
Okay.
Which is about 1,400 meters
Okay.
above sea level. Is basically the no-go zone. Below that is what all the research says. Of course, there were farmers in the country who were growing coffee at below that as these issues have come up. Some of that scientific research I mentioned before is what varietals can be grown at lower temperatures to make good use of that land. That study is going on right now to test some of that. But you do have farmers who probably in that scenario I gave you before of generational turnover and not wanting to be in farming in coffee farming. Most likely, a lot of them have had land that was once productive, which is now either not productive or decreasing in a meaningful way, and they're seeing that that's going to be a challenge for them in the future.
That's huge. That's huge for the world. And kind of like you mentioned, this labor shortage that you're seeing, people want to be in other spaces. They want to. It's similar to what you hear in the trades and the blue collar, right? There's not a lot of HVAC techs. There's not a lot of landscapers. I mean,
Yes.
the people doing the work are becoming less and less all of the time.
Definitely.
And
absolutely.
So does that mean that if you're moving into that trade, that pays more? Is that becoming something where it will become a higher paid item, or is that kind of how do you see that playing out from a financial perspective, from the economics of it?
It's a supply and demand equation for sure. As the number of workers go down, the ones who are doing the work demand more, and they know the situation. They know the situation well. We basically have to invest in demand creation for working with us as a strategic initiative. So like last year, for example, there are certain influencers within the coffee picking community that we partnered with to do videos, talk about the difference in working in our farms versus somebody else's farms. We've had to invest in a lot of the workers that come they move from region to region around the country. As the coffee grows, it doesn't all grow at the same time. So we've had to invest in the housing where they stay when they come and pick with us. We had to put in the Starlink, so they had Wi-Fi in some of these regions. Like, you have to make it an attractive place why they would come and work with us versus going to pick coffee at another farm, or to go and work in some other crop, or whatever it could be. And it's you're competing for labor in these like supply demand dynamics, for sure.
Wow. That's really interesting. That's cool. That's cool. You bring in the internet. That's a lot of fun.
That was their number one request, more than, we want comfortable pillows or whatever. It was, we don't want to be bored.
We want Wi-Fi. That's awesome, man.
Wi-Fi. Yeah.
So if I mean, I don't know much about cropping, but I've seen, the videos of these machines that grab a tree and they shake it, and there's a net underneath it, and then it dropped the product, and then, they don't have to do as much picking. Do you do that same sort of thing, or do those machines not work because of the elevations and the changes and that sort of things? And if they didn't work, if it was flat, would those machines work, or would it still be hand picking?
I think if it were flatter, it would definitely make it easier. You see those tractors that you mentioned, they use them in wine for the grapes. They use them in picking olives for olive oil. Pretty common there. The challenge is this is just so inclined, and no piece of land is the same. Like, it's not like, oh, I plotted this land and it's built for mechanization. A big part of it would be we'd have to tear out existing trees and almost replant or plant a vacant lot and make it adapted to that technology. The other challenge that technology poses is when it shakes the tree like that, you get ripe and unripe. In this case, let's call it coffee cherries, but in another example, it'd be grapes or olives. So it does play into the sorting, and there's also a cultural aspect to this, right? So the workers get paid based on the amount that they pick. So if we start to include like unripe cherries or unripe coffee in their counts, it's like throws off a cultural dynamic. Like, everybody's so used to doing something in a specific way.
Wow.
That it would be disruptive to like the culture of labor. But that said, we're going to do some tests. There's a group in Germany that we're looking to run a pilot with. They have some tractors that are built for this kind of terrain. Basically, they hook up to a truck. You just need a flat place to park the truck. It has a winch on the back, and it goes down into the plants, and then it pulls back up with the winch.
Wow.
So it can maintain, because there's no way you could trust the parking brakes or whatever. You'd have these things crashing down the mountains. So we're going to try and do some of that, but all this is a few years out to really do it at scale.
So if you have a labor shortage and it comes to cost, or you have tariffs, Starbucks, etc., they have those same challenges, but you're controlling costs better because you're at the base root of it. So you're always going to have a little bit of advantage to that.
Yes.
So speaking to that, why bring back an existing brand like Juan Valdez instead of creating your own brand? Green Coffee Company Coffee. Why did you make that move?
That brand it was invented in 1959. There was about $1.4 billion of investment in the brand between the 1960s to early 2000s. Even to today, there's about a 28% market awareness of the brand.
Wow.
When you get into Hispanic communities and then the 40 and over general population groups, the awareness is even higher. So to try and recreate that with a new brand that we were starting, it might cost us. This is $1.4 billion in 1960s to
Right.
2000 money.
Could have cost
To
you
try
$4
and do
billion.
this now, it cost us $4 billion
Yeah.
to try and recreate that. So it's a lot easier to license it.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. Okay, so that was a good move. I mean, it sounds like it was a good move. Um, what's next? I mean, like, where are you going next? What does the next 10 years look like? Where do you see yourself? What are you guys doing in the future?
Our goal is to take the company public in the US. We have, as I mentioned to you, a large pool of existing investors, about 100 million that we've raised from 550 high net worth investors. You have to get them some liquidity in the coming let's say 18 to 24 months, and then we want to bring in more capital for the business, continue to expand our footprint in Colombia, give us more ammo to go after the market in the US and Canada, and just continue to grow and have fun and do something interesting and take on the household names that everybody knows in coffee, who we put a chink in their armor for sure. We're doing that right now.
Well, look at I love what you're doing here. I love what you're doing. I love the. I mean, I
Thank you.
think it's pretty cool. I'm gonna tell my wife, hey, check out this Juan Valdez. Let's stop buying the Starbucks product.
There you go.
Let's get something else going. You know, and it's true. The coffee is so expensive. I mean, I think about it. You know, my wife uses about 30 K-cups a week, right?
Mhm.
Each one of those packets has 10
Wow.
units in it. And I know it's a lot of coffee. That's what I say too. And it costs about
That's a lot.
$30, right? It costs about $30. But that equates
Yeah.
to about 2 coffees a day, right? That's about 2 coffees a day. So if I was to go to Starbucks and buy 2 coffees a day every day, it cost me $210 a week for the cost of 30,
Yeah.
right? If I buy the
Sure.
packet. So one of the benefits is that Juan Valdez coffee, that's on the shelf, right? I can go in and I can buy that right off the shelf.
Or through our e-commerce,
Or
Juan
through
Valdez Cafe store. We have all the formulations. We have the pods that your wife would like, available in 12 packs, and also the club sizes, so the 72 count. So yeah, it's definitely a saver if you're going to be drinking a lot of coffee versus going to a takeout place, for sure.
Listen, I hate the takeout places. I think it's a waste of money, the takeout places. That's just my own opinion. I think make it at home, save the money, drink as much as you want. Let's go down that route. Ralph, on the other hand, will come to work with 3 coffees in the morning from Starbucks. I have literally seen him walk in with 3 24-ouncers ready to go for the entire day. Yes, we put Ralph on the spot. He's turning one shade of red right now.
Not
that
anymore,
I have not
man.
seen him turn.
Not anymore.
Okay, not anymore. He's on a life change.
Yeah.
But this has been really, really interesting. I mean, what you're building, it's incredible. I feel like I could talk to you for hours about how you put it together and what was the methodology and just everything we've learned today. I guess
Oh, thank you.
for the entrepreneurs out there who are listening to the show, 3 million people have listened to this show in the last 12 months.
Great.
What advice do you give them? What do you share with them as they're on their entrepreneurial journey? Because you've done something very successful. I mean, to kind of encapsulate it, you were in the corporate world doing the corporate grind. You got the itch to move out on your own. You decided to do it. You took the leap, you invested, you went into something that seems kind of risky to me. Like, it's not something that's just easy making money. You had to put a lot of investment in it. You had to learn a lot. You then had to go out and raise capital, which is also another, challenging thing. I mean, I guess you've been working in it for a level, so some tricks to get it across the finish line. But it still is a push. Now you're dealing with different languages, different country. You're dealing with all sorts of different environmental, political, geopolitical, all sorts of different environments, all sorts of different cultures. You put it together, and in under 5 years, you became Colombia's largest, biggest coffee producer. I mean, everything that you've been through in the last 5 years seems absolutely incredible. All the milestones and things that you've moved, that's got to be an incredible discipline, to what you guys have put together. What tips are you going to leave with other entrepreneurs people aren't doing what you're doing. What tips are out there, and how did you do this?
Well, I got to keep it general because I don't know where everybody is in their
Sure.
journey. But you mentioned all the highlights. There's also been mistakes along the way, challenges. It's definitely a perseverance. Are you willing to get punched in the face and get back up? Coming here and doing these things, figuring out a new culture, language, government regulations. It has not been a smooth ride by any means. And we've accomplished a lot, but we go through the roller coaster like every growing business, entrepreneurial endeavor does. And you just have to, I think, every day get up and continue fighting. If it's something you believe in, your pain tolerance is going to dictate a lot of the outcome, I think. So it's choose something you really want to, you're willing to sacrifice for, and then actually be willing to do it.
All right, perseverance. That's what I took. You got to persevere.
I think so.
When I shared the highlights, I was also thinking about the pain that came along with those highlights. I want you to know that I actually felt the pain. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and it is not it can take years to climb the mountain. You can slide down that son of a gun in 45 minutes, right? So, you got to be really you got to really persevere. I think that's a great word. So, we know where you're moving next. That's really exciting. Social media. Are you on social media? Can people follow you on social media? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, if people want to connect with me directly, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and just search my name there and find me. We're doing a little bit of capital raising. If people are interested in learning more, they can reach out to me. And then we have and this would be for, high net worth investors looking for private placements, off market deals.
Sure.
And then we have our green coffee company website if you just want to learn more. And then I gave you a little earlier the Juan Valdez cafe store if people want to buy some great coffee.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that seems like a great opportunity for those looking to be a part of the organization on the capital raise. I mean, it seems like guys, it seems like in the hour that we've spent together, you're not fooling around. I mean, you're smart, you're intelligent, you guys are moving with purpose, and you've got great goals ahead of you. So that's very exciting. So if anybody out there, definitely reach out and see if you can put a deal together. That's very exciting. All right, I've got one final question for you before we bring this to a close. We've got a big giant billboard, whiteboard on the side of the road, the freeway, whatever it is. You can put one word, one sentence, one phrase on it. What do you want to share with the world today?
I think it doesn't necessarily have to be for.
It can be for whatever you want. It can be for whatever you want. You choose. What do you want to share? What does Adam want to share with the world today?
Have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah.
I love that, man. You gotta have fun. You gotta have a good time in life. That's the best part. Well, man, listen, Adam, thank you so much for joining the show. This has been the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. We are back 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday. If you like the show, give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments into the comment box. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, anywhere it's social, we're hanging out. Follow Adam, connect with him. He's on LinkedIn. And look at if you've got some high net worth and you're looking at investing, give him a shout. Get a connection going, get a conversation going, great place. And outside of that, I'm just going to say put the Starbucks aside and hook up with Juan Valdez. Do it a favor and go with the Colombian guys. I love it. I like it. Adam, it's been a super pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Every CEO's journey has its Everest. The moments when the path forward feels steep, uncertain, and alone. With Sherpa CEO coaching, you don't climb alone. Our experienced coaches are your guides, helping you break through barriers, sharpen your strategy, strengthen your leadership, and build a team that can carry you higher. With tailored one-on-one coaching, strategic planning, and real accountability, your summit is within reach. Sherpa CEO Coaching, your guide to confidence, clarity, and extraordinary business growth. Get coached and learn more at sherpaceo.com.